Ladies and gentlemen, when you see what took place, when you look at what happened in Afghanistan, with Americans still left there, citizens still left behind, and you see the arrogance and the narcissism of mashed potato brains and his merry band of highly educated, extremely polished bureaucrats and diplomats, Blinken, Jake Sullivan, President Biden is surrounded by people who are supposed to be competent. They're the definition of incompetence. They're completely inept. And we saw what took place on the world stage. Immediately after that, people were calling for his resignation, his impeachment, and removal. The man doesn't know how to deal with the crisis. That being said, we're heading towards a financial collapse, a stock market collapse, a stock market crash. All you have to do is look at the articles below in the description section. I've been talking about this. I predict a stock market crash. I think it's going to happen within the next year and a half. It's impossible to say when. Could be next month, could be next year. We have inflation at a 13-year high. We have the producer price index, the cost of buying food or for a restaurant or metal for cars at an all-time high. Since it wasn't the producer price index is at an all-time high, the consumer price index is at a 12-year high. The articles will be below. So prices are going up. People are paying more for groceries. Let me know in the comments section. Are you paying more for groceries, for clothing? So people are paying more for items that used to be cheaper. Businesses are paying more to do business. There's a shortage in terms of supplies, everything from semiconductors to any product you can think of. There's a supply chain. There's tremendous supply chain issues. And you have margin, more people trading, more hedge funds and more investors and more institutions and more individuals trading on margin than at any point in U.S. history. Rivaling 1929. That's below in the description as well. You have a fundamental problem that Biden, in his speech, was like ludicrous. Half the country isn't going to listen to Biden or apoplectic Democrats who've been wrong on everything anyway. They can be as cruel and ruthless as they want. Half the country won't listen. Because they talked about how Trump was so mean and boorish and crude. They're actually the real bullies. Their policies, their advocacy, their protocols didn't work. They don't work. They keep moving the goalposts, and then they get angrier and more frustrated when people won't listen to them. When they flip-flop and all their experts change their tune on a monthly basis. But hit subscribe to this channel right now because not a lot of people are talking about this. And you have inflation high. We had the biggest jobs miss in history. So you have to ask yourself, well, why is the stock market doing so well? Corporate profits are going to decline. And GDP has been revised downwards, so I'm giving you all these economic indicators. Hit subscribe to this channel. Tell your friends about this channel. I have 2 live streams in the evening and then in the late evening. So I'll have a live stream today probably around 5:30 p.m., 6:30. Probably 5:30. Be here for the live stream. If you want to support my work, my Patreon is below in the pinned comment. If you want to give this a super thanks, the super thanks is right next to the like and share buttons. But there's a lesson to be learned from a hedge fund, Archegos, that went under about 4 months ago. Okay? The SEC didn't know how over-leveraged it was because it utilized an investment called a contract for difference. This is Investopedia. A contract for difference is an agreement between an investor and a broker to exchange the difference in value of a financial product between the time the contract opens and closes. They don't own the stock, by the way. If you engage in this type of investment, you don't own the underlying stock. You are betting on the fluctuation up or down. The interesting thing is, Archegos, the hedge fund that went under, they had a great deal of leverage, more money borrowed on margin than the SEC or the government or any regulatory body knew. Why? Because they didn't own the stock. But all of these hedge funds, you remember credit default swaps? Well, this is the new one to be, you heard it here first, or very likely heard it here first, contract for differences. Okay? Regulators like the SEC don't know how much money a hedge fund borrows if they utilize CFDs, contract for differences, because they don't have to report ownership of a stock. They're just betting on the fluctuation up or down. What happened is Viacom tanked 1 week. They had a large position in Viacom. Once Viacom tanked, the CFDs that Archegos owned, that they owned through borrowed money, which is margin, they had to put in more money because they had margin calls to deal with. So if you buy stock on margin and the stock tanks, the money that you've borrowed, you have to put in, capital cash to just keep your position entirely, because they demand like 25% or 30% of the money that you borrowed, because your stock is worth less. And the money you borrowed is now descending along with the money you put in because your investment is worth less. The problem is with the margin call, if you're already borrowing money, you don't have the cash to meet the margin call. So you're up the creek already. If you're borrowing the money, if you're buying stock with money that you don't have, whether you're a hedge fund or an individual investor, and the stock tanks, and then you get a margin call from the bank saying, hey, you owe us money because the money that you borrowed to buy the stock, the stock's worth less now, and you need to pay back some of the money you borrowed. That's how hedge funds go under, and that's what happened with Archegos. Reason I'm kind of other CFD risks include weak industry regulation, potential lack of liquidity, and the need to maintain an adequate margin. Okay, that's Investopedia. So they didn't know, financial regulators didn't know how much money this hedge fund borrowed. They don't know how much money any of these hedge funds are truly borrowing, because a lot of the times in their investments, they don't own the underlying stock. They just play, and everyone takes a commission on the buying and the selling of the movement up or down in terms of stock price. So they don't tell the regulators how much money they owe. Anyway, the whole point is Biden is completely clueless. They're not talking about this. They're obsessed over the pandemic. It's like their life now. It's like their last hope, their last bastion of, pontificating and preaching and telling people what to do. They've already lost a tremendous amount of respect and prestige worldwide and at home with the Afghanistan absolute catastrophe and embarrassing debacle that Biden presided over because he wanted to spite Trump and didn't bring home Americans. On May 1st, by May 1st, he could have started withdrawing Americans January, February, March, April. He decided arbitrarily to give a date, removed the military prior to removing Americans and Afghans, and 13 soldiers lost their lives because of Biden, because it was a completely rushed and chaotic evacuation that didn't have to happen in the manner it did. Then we left, $80 billion in weaponry. And so we armed them for years and years and years. We still have Americans left behind. The economy is in the tank. Everything from jobs that we had the record, and the link is below. These are all reputable links. Okay, CBS Market Watch, CNN, all the wonderful. You can't say that what I'm saying isn't true. There's no reason for the stock market to be as high as it is. The problem is we very likely, I don't know if it'll happen, but we very likely will have to bail out a couple of banks like we did in '08. Might not be as bad, could be as bad as or worse. I'm not sure. All I know is that, do you know what's going to hit the fan? We are completely running as a country without a leader, without any leadership, and we're asleep at the wheel. In terms of foreign policy, if China decides to invade Taiwan or blockade Taiwan, we have no response at all. I'm not even talking about a military response. We have no response in terms of galvanizing support internationally because nobody trusts us. With Trump, they respected Trump. People around the world respected Trump. The Democrats, people on social media, liberals in other countries, especially here, didn't respect Trump. But who cares? Half of every country either loved, admired, or respected Trump. And everybody knew he was capable of being the first president to step foot in North Korea, the Doha Agreement, which reversed U.S. foreign policy, and would have evacuated Americans in an orderly, rational manner. That was the issue. It was the manner in which Biden presided over the evacuation, not the evacuation itself. We had to go. He dropped the ball on that because he's mashed potato brains. Then we had the Abraham Accords. The man could negotiate deals, and he was unpredictable. And he was sharp and very, very intelligent in terms of how to deal with people and countries. And for 4 years, U.S. national security was, oh my God, Trump worked with Russia. Another one of their lies. Nobody's lied more than media. Absolutely nobody's lied more than media. Yep, The Atlantic running an article, Trump disparaged fallen Americans. That's an article, by the way, that didn't source any quote, had no backing or justification to be printed or published. There was no evidence he said anything of the sort. It's contrary to who he is. It's almost certainly, it was fabricated. And guess what? Americans are left behind, and they're less outraged than a quote attributed to Trump by The Atlantic without any backing or sourcing or evidence. You're talking about the biggest hypocrites of all time. These people are the biggest narcissists of all time. And when the market crash takes place, because of these very, very risky investments, CFDs, that's just one of the risky investments. Nobody knew that Archegos, the hedge fund, was that over-leveraged, had that much on margin, and would go under just because of a price drop in Viacom. So imagine if there's a market correction where you have an even greater price drop in Viacom and other stocks. Imagine, God forbid, what could take place. If the market tanks and crashes, then you have investment accounts wiped out, but then you also have layoffs. Then you also have banks not giving out loans, even though interest rates are basically the lowest they can be. At zero. Or near zero. So how do we get out of a market crash when Democrats have tanked the economy because of their paranoia and hysteria for a disease that's third in terms of lethality? Well, actually, in terms of lethality, you're talking about heart disease and cancer ended more people's lives. And you're talking about, on average, Johns Hopkins, you can look, it's a 98 to 99% survival rate. This is throughout the country, and it's also depending on your age. If you're healthy, if you're a healthy individual in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, I don't even want to get into it. The stock market crash will unfortunately be the reality check. When Democrats were gleefully looking at $1 to $2 billion in property damage and 25 lives lost according to Wikipedia because of a reckoning, they used the word reckoning gleefully. Okay, I'm not using this gleefully because I don't want people to suffer more than they have, even people on the left who love Biden, or actually nobody loves Biden, but who voted for Biden. The interesting thing is the mentality against Trump was, well, if you voted for Trump, then it's all your fault. Everything bad was your fault. Well, we had record low unemployment. We had foreign policy successes. But they still blame Trump for the pandemic. Now, what happens if there's a market crash? Is that the fault of every single Democrat who voted for Biden? What happens, oh, by the way, if Americans are still left behind? Or, God forbid, lose their lives in Afghanistan. What happens then? Is it the fault of every Democrat or morally superior liberal who voted for Biden? What happens if there's greater wealth inequality because of the market crash? What happens if there's even more higher unemployment? Go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics right now. The highest unemployment rates are in blue states. 2022 is around the corner. Okay? He's going to be impeached numerous times. They're going to demand his removal as well. Nobody wants this man as president because nobody believes, I should say, half the country doesn't, because half the country doesn't believe that a person who slurs his speech and goes on these bizarre tangents and then lowers it into a hushed, frightening whisper knows what's going on. Okay, he's one fry short of a Happy Meal. He's the lights are on, but nobody's home. You could say whatever you'd like. Everybody knows, including President Xi and Putin, everybody, the whole planet. We're not being led by anybody. And half the country, or I should say, social media algorithms, media, the Democratic Party, Major League Baseball will even move its All-Star game because of laws that are completely constitutional, that are upheld by the Supreme Court. Everybody knows that all you have to do is make Democrats overreact in any manner, whether it's a public health crisis or any other issue. Trump's tweets, and they'll react in the most absurd, completely illogical, irrational manner. When, and I hope I'm wrong, but when the market does crash, Biden won't have an answer for it because, like I said, the CFD problem, the contract for differences issue, just like the credit default swaps in 2008, these are ways that they make trillions of dollars in profit. There are $4 trillion in hedge fund assets. They make trillions in profits just buying and selling the up and down volatility of the market or of individual stocks. The SEC, government regulators, don't know how much leverage these hedge funds have, or they don't know how much of their investments are on margin, borrowed money. You combine that with inflation at a 13-year high, consumer price index at a 12-year high, I believe. The producer price index is an all-time high. The GDP being revised downwards. Job estimates missing the mark by like 700,000 jobs. I mean, I'm giving everybody economic indicators that will be below in the description section. We're going to where in a handbasket, and they're going to demand the removal of mashed potato brains because he's focused on everything. Like, the reaction to the pandemic is what's helping cause this financial collapse. Nobody told the microscopic organism where you can survive 98 to 99% of the time if you're healthy with no pre-existing conditions, according to Johns Hopkins and government data. That didn't develop any policies. The issue, ladies and gentlemen, is the response to the pandemic. You can't just throw your hands up in the air and say, "Oh, we took back Andrew Cuomo's Emmy for putting infected people into nursing homes." He directly led to 13 to 15,000 lives being lost in his own state in the most horrendous manner possible. You can't just say that, well, it's pandemic related. Any financial collapse that we have will be related to the policies of Democrats and the paranoia of media. And the media paranoia and hysteria is what helps shape Democratic policies. So not the other way around. So Democrats are pure public relations, and they love the power grab. So when they tanked the economy and prevented people from working under the guise of saving them, which didn't work, draconian policies did not work either here or anywhere around the world. You look at Sweden and look at other countries that had a more rational approach. The data doesn't lie. I mean, you can just look. Look at the hysteria we're still at. It's supposed to be 2 weeks. At the end of the day, the stimulus checks helping cause this inflation and other underlying issues, the labor shortage with jobs that are already there. Like, we have job openings, but there's a labor shortage only in Biden's America. And Trump warned about all of this, from the stock market crash to the labor shortages to all of this. He wanted to open up in May of last year. They said, no, experts say. The stimulus is going to eventually run out. We have an eviction crisis of 11 million people facing eviction, and you're going to read endless tweets from AOC and Bernie Sanders complaining, and they're the ones who were silent throughout all of this because Democrats walk in lockstep, and Bernie says he's independent. He's really a tool of the Democratic Party. They tanked the U.S. economy to get Trump out. Or perhaps save lives, okay? And then laid the groundwork for a financial catastrophe and stock market collapse while these hedge funds are getting away with being over-leveraged and buying stocks on more margin than they can pay back. And Biden is focusing on climate change and issues that have nothing to do with economic growth. You can say climate change does, but short-term economic growth, which is what we need right now, it doesn't. At all. So, give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. We're going to you-know-where in a handbasket, and Biden is completely clueless. Democrats, they're clueless because they haven't gotten the memo from CNN or MSNBC. Their lives revolve around that. They got what they wanted. Mean Trump is out, so they can now be, now wish people demise and hope people end the lives of people who don't listen to them end. Okay, they're completely out of it. But I believe the stock market is going to crash within the next year and a half. Save your money. Ladies and gentlemen, you lasted this long to my 23-minute crowd. Save your money. Every month, every week. And forget investing for the near term, in my view. But do what you want. I'm not giving any investment advice. I'm just saying save your money. Open up a savings account. Forget about interest rate. Forget about growth. Just save your money. Amass as much money as possible for a rainy day. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now to this channel. I'll have a live stream today about 6:30 p.m. or so, 5:30 p.m. Be here for the live stream. Thanks, everybody.